there's this idea that if someone is committing this horrible act or this very evil act, they have to be an evil person or a horrible person. So at the outset of genocide studies, many people started looking at psychological traits, trying to see if people who commit genocide have things like antisocial personality disorder. You might have heard of Milgram's experiments or Zimbardo's experiments where they're trying to see why do people do bad things. And time again, they found that the people who commit bad acts, the people who commit genocide, actually aren't evil people. They actually don't typically have some kind of psychological abnormality. They're typically normal people who are acting in extreme social situations. So we were conducting a study where we were looking at how people testify on their own behalf. And we were particularly interested in how people who were accused of crimes of genocide, which are seen as the worst crimes in the world, how they talk about what they did and how they rationalize their actions. So we looked at 27 defendants' testimonies and read their testimonies very, very closely to look at how they make sense of what they did after the fact. And we were looking specifically for something called techniques of neutralization, and this is essentially how people rationalize or neutralize their actions. And basically, that line is referring to the fact that we found that the #1 most common technique was something we called appeals to good character. Rather than talking about the terrible things they did time and time again, they tried to say that they were either a good person or that they had done good deeds. So in terms of being a good person, they would say, I actually have friends who are Tutsis, I really don't have this type of ethnic animus toward Tutsis, or they'd flat out say, I'm actually a good person. Or they would emphasize good deeds and they would say, I tried to save Tutsis during the genocide, I tried to stop the genocide, really trying to, rather than focus on what was tarnishing their reputation, trying to say, no, actually I'm a good person, and trying to sort of counteract the stigma that comes with being accused of genocide. One of the most common misconceptions about why genocide occurs is this idea of diversity breeding conflict. For a lot of years, people thought that genocide occurred because of diversity and thought that more diverse countries would have conflict and thus have genocide. This is not the case, so I and others have looked at whether diversity is actually associated with genocide, and it's not. So I did want to say first that because of this common misconception, it's not actually diversity. Rather, what we know instead is that it's typically much more present-day political arguments and political factors. So if I had to pinpoint a few reasons why genocide occurs, first I would say it's often leaders who are threatened, as I mentioned before, and these leaders often try multiple strategies to respond to these threats. These strategies fail, and then genocide is often like a strategy and a last attempt strategy. So as odd as it sounds to say it this way, genocide is often seen like a policy for these leaders.